The Rules Committee will come to order. We're waiting for Chairman Smith to arrive, and in light of the fact that he is not here yet, why don't we begin with Ms. Lofgren, and I see Ms. Jackson-Lee is here as well. And so if you two would like to come forward, I don't want to detain the very important new chairman of the Rules Committee, Mr. Sessions, and he's given me dispensation to proceed. And so we're taking on a Texan here, Mr. Smith, by proceeding without his being in the room, but it's all Pete Sessions' fault, I'd just like to say, which is he'll learn that that's the way. Here he is. So I talked long enough to. Why don't you sit between these two women? Pete Sessions ordered me to go ahead, Lamar, and your absence. So pull your chair up, and we'll begin with your testimony, and without objection, any prepared statements that you all have will appear in the record in their entirety, and we welcome your summary. So, Chairman Smith, congratulations. Nice to have you. And
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to turn the microphone on there, please. Push the button right there on the microphone. Lamar, the button on the microphone there. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Slaughter. I'm here to testify in regard to H.R. 6429, the STEM Jobs Act of 2012. I have a brief prepared statement, and then, of course, we'll welcome questions. The bill under consideration increases the availability of visas to high-skilled workers in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. The House considered the introduced version of the STEM Jobs Act under suspension of the rules in September. The bill received a 100-vote majority, including support from 30 Democrats. Mr. Chairman, the STEM Jobs Act will help us create jobs, increase our competitiveness, and spur our innovation. It makes our immigration system smarter by eliminating the diversity visa program, which invites fraud and is a threat to our national security. These visas are reallocated to foreign graduates of American universities who help make us more competitive in the global economy. I am pleased that the bill has the support of many technology associations and businesses. These include the Institute for Electrical and Electronics Engineers, United States Chamber of Commerce, Compete America, the Information Technology Industry Council, and the Society for Human Resource Management. Mr. Chairman, this committee is likely to issue a rule providing for the consideration of H.R. 6429, which means that it will need only a simple majority to pass the House. The vote on this bill in September clearly shows such support. Nevertheless, I have worked with my colleagues in the House and Senate to negotiate a modified version of the bill in the hope of attracting even more support. The bill was amended to include the non-immigrant visa program to allow the spouses and minor children of permanent residents to wait in the U.S. for green cards to become available after they have spent 1 year on the green card waiting list. It also expands the rollover of any unused STEM green cards into future years and amends certain eligibility requirements. H.R. 6429 started as a bipartisan bill, and I hope that these changes attract even more support from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I encourage this committee to adopt a rule that provides for its consideration so that American businesses can retain the innovators that develop through our universities regardless of their national origin and ultimately create more jobs. I look forward to your questions. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I make my statement, let me just say to you, Mr. Dwyer, it's been a pleasure to serve with you these many years, and although we haven't always agreed on every item, we've always cared about our country together. Just a few minor items, but I wish you well in your retirement and looking out at the beautiful Pacific Ocean, and congratulations. There it is, and congratulations. Other than just, I'm sure you will, and our paths may very well cross again, and certainly congratulations to the new chairman. As we know, we're considering this bill, and I think the bill is flawed, and it has actually been a flawed process. I oppose the bill, just as I oppose the bill that failed under the suspension of rules in September. There are two particularly sad parts about the bill. First, there is broad bipartisan consensus that we should provide STEM visas to foreign advanced degree graduates of U.S. universities. We should be able to come to an agreement for the benefit of the American people and our economy. Second, one lesson we should have drawn from the 2012 elections is that the American people want us to work together to to solve problems, and that includes fixing our broken immigration system. But we can't do that when the majority brings to the House floor a partisan bill that they have not negotiated over, and a bill that I believe also is designed to cut legal immigration. For more than a decade, I have worked to increase visas for STEM graduates, from America's great research universities. I come from Silicon Valley, and I know how valuable these brilliant people are in starting businesses and making innovation. But I think this bill is premised on a dangerous thought, which is that immigration is a zero-sum game. Now, many in this body, I think for too long, have adhered to sort of a Grover Norquist type pledge to never increase immigration, not a single visa. But if we accept that zero-sum premise, we are going to be unable to craft comprehensive top-to-bottom immigration reform. How are we going to provide for reform to allow our agricultural workers to get right with the law, the dreamers who are brought here as children? How are we going to accommodate all of those individuals who need to be able to transition and get right with the law if it's a zero-sum game? The answer is we won't be able to do that. Also, it's worse than zero-sum because the way the bill is crafted, the diversity visa, which is being eliminated, will go to this category of very elite individuals. But if they're not all used, they will simply expire. They won't roll down, as is ordinarily the case, to other backlog categories. We know from the study that was recently done that bachelor degree level engineers born in India have to wait 70 years for a number to come up. Certainly, rolling down unused visas to other categories would be a wise thing to do. The bill, as I understand it, is crafted, allows for years of rollover, and then the rollover would cease. Well, we don't know exactly how long it will take to work through the backlog, but the speculation is it will be several years. It's only at that point that the rollover would cease. Well, we don't have 50,000 PhD and master graduates from research universities every year from foreign universities. So this will actually, in the end, have the effect of limiting immigration. I think also that the provision for so-called V visas, where relatives can come and await their numbers in the United States, is not as good as it should be. And I'll contrast it with what the Congress did, and I'll say it was a Republican Congress in the year 2000, and I think, Mr. Chairman, you were involved in it. It involved allowing those waiting for their card spouses and minor children of legal permanent residents to wait here. But at that time, work was permitted, and also people who are already here were permitted to benefit from it. That is not the case in the bill before us, and I think it falls short. I also have concerns about the bill which expressly allows for-profit and online schools to participate. Now, I understand the bill does, in fact, contain language limiting their immediate participation, but my concern is that this opens the door to that sector, and I think certainly the possibility of simply selling visas to rich foreigners is very much a concern that I have. I think the bill is flawed. It could have been fixed. However, we have not had the discussion necessary to come together to fix the problems. So today I'm presenting the committee with two amendments that I ask to be ruled in order. They are the IDEA Act, which is and the Attracting the Best and Brightest Act, two bills I've already introduced in this Congress. The IDEA Act is a complete reform of high-skilled immigration and is supported by virtually every high-tech company and employer association in the United States. And the Attracting the Best and Brightest Act is a clean STEM bill that I believe would garner overwhelming support. I think we have to move beyond the zero-sum immigration discussion. We have to get beyond the old tired arguments that pit one group of immigrants against another. I'm eager to work with Republicans for a top-to-bottom reform. This isn't it. And I would note I've just received word that the administration has just released a statement of administration policy in opposition to H.R. 6429, and I thought the Rules Committee would want to know about that, and I would be happy to make that available to the committee. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me take the liberty. Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be sitting alongside of you. Let me take the liberty of, again, joining my colleague from California and wishing you the best in your new life. And thank you for the service that you've given. I'm delighted to see our ranking member. Thank her for her service as well. And I congratulate my fellow Texan, who will be the chairperson of this committee. Members, what you are looking at are three members who have worked on immigration issues for the greater part of their career in the United States Congress. Each of us have served on the Judiciary Committee. I think all three of us have served on Homeland Security, and we've had the opportunity to be able to serve. In addition, Mr. Smith and myself, when I was the ranking member of the subcommittee, worked extensively on issues dealing with engineers. We were the beginnings of the question of science, technology, engineering, math, and frankly, we looked at issues dealing with building homegrown engineers, people dealing with science, technology, engineering, and math. So we have had some common ground, and I unfortunately oppose this legislation and wanted to lay out the reasons why. I still hope that someday we will find the opportunity to build up the infrastructure of science, technology, engineering, and math among our students, American students here in the United States, among many schools, Hispanic serving, African American, historically black colleges, community colleges, and others. I still think that is a goal that we seek to achieve. But I am a strong supporter of legislation that my colleague, Congresswoman Loughran, introduced, H.R. 6412, that was a STEM bill. And I'd hoped that we would have been able to join with Mr. Smith on his legislation, but I rise to oppose it for several reasons. First of all, as has already been noted, the visas that are now in place in this present legislation have a 4-year life and no rollover, meaning no opportunity to be utilized in other areas. If we're talking about comprehensive immigration reform, we have many people that we're leaving along the highways and byways of life. Mr. Smith mentioned the ability for individuals to stay in America while they're waiting on a visa, legal permanent resident. But by cutting off the rollover capacity, I think that undermines the bill. Second, of course, we have all heard stories regarding the diversity visa, and I take great offense, but in a way of being gentle about it, about the attitude toward diversity visas, which is completely eliminated. The idea of diversity visas is something of America's generosity and as well acknowledgement of the desire of people to come to this country. I am looking at a table that indicates in 1994, for example, the highest utilization of diversity immigrant visas were coming from Poland, Ireland, the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Indonesia, Argentina, Germany, Australia, and France. There was no discussion at that time about eliminating the diversity visa. We also recognize, and I was just trying to read this, that we have had investigations of diversity visa and have looked administratively to cure some of the concerns. But the utilization of diversity visas has changed. 1994, 1999, 2004, countries like Bulgaria, 1999, Albania, Ukraine, Romania. We moved on to 2004, and we see countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, and now in 2009, countries like Ethiopia, Nigeria, Egypt, Bangladesh, Uzbekistan, Kenya, Morocco, etc. So there is a diversity among the diversity visas. Take, for example, individuals coming out of Africa. 47,879, which represent only 1.1 of the legal permanent resident status. This was in 2009. Very minute impact. Any issue of fraud can be fixed, as it has been fixed administratively. We have no direct documentation that a mountain of terrorists or others have managed to escape through the diversity visa. We know that the 9/11 terrorists were not diversity visa. They were just unattended to when they came into this country, as I understand it, visa-less. So I would hope that the amendments that I have to make, to offer, would be made in order on that basis. One is to strike the language that eliminates the elimination of the diversity visa, and then two, to track the language that we have supported, which is to allow rollover of the 55,000 visas without cutting them off after a period of time. I would lastly say that I have introduced a comprehensive immigration reform bill over and over again in almost every session, and I do think it's time for us to come to that conclusion. I hope my colleagues here on this committee will allow these amendments to be in order, and even to the extent of an open rule, and I would hope that we could work together on comprehensive immigration reform.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jackson Lee, and thanks to all of you for your for very thoughtful testimony. And let me just say that obviously there's bipartisan support for the notion of focusing on science, technology, engineering, and math and visas. And I understand that there is some disagreement. And I think there's also a sense, and I've been talking to a bipartisan group of senators, and while I'm not going to be here in the next Congress, I think that there is a very good chance of seeing some kind of movement on immigration issues. Whether the term comprehensive is used or not remains to be seen, but I do believe that what we're seeing here today is a step in the direction of dealing with the issue of immigration. And I think that, again, there's a bipartisan consensus not only for support of the STEM program and concept through visas, but also there is a bipartisan sense that we need to tackle the issue of border security, immigration reform, and I hope very much that in the 113th Congress we're able to see a number of these vexing questions that have dealt with us legislatively over the last several years that I personally have been involved in and worked closely with Ms. Lofgren and others on H-1B visas and others, and I know you, Chairman Smith, and I have talked about that issue in the past. I hope that we're able to see a resolution of this. My sense is that while this might not be perfect, Chairman Smith has tried to work in a bipartisan way. You've indicated that in your testimony, and I know from hearing that, and things have not worked out to everyone's liking, but I hope very much that that this is a start towards dealing with the issue. So I have no questions other than to say thank you all very much. Chairman-to-be Sessions, let me at the outset publicly before the committee extend congratulations to my good friend, the Vice Chairman of the Rules Committee, who in a matter of weeks, I'm not counting the days or the minutes or the hours, I will tell you, but in January, Mr. Sessions will become the next Chairman of the Rules Committee, and I can absolutely guarantee you that this place will run much more smoothly than it has with my involvement for the last 14 years. So I know you'll be able to. Mr. Sessions.
Chairman, thank you very much. I'd like to join my colleagues that have spoken this afternoon about not only the young Chairman David Dreyer, but the way he brought enthusiasm and integrity to this committee. I think this committee, under the prior two chairmen, the gentlewoman from Rochester and the gentleman from California, have brought a sense of spirit and enthusiasm to this. I've spoken to Mrs. Slaughter myself. She actually called me. It wasn't collect, but I would have accepted a collect call from Kentucky probably. But thank you very much. I look forward to that. But I think that we're all committed, as Ms. Lofgren had stated, to an open and fair process here. And even though she disagreed occasionally with you, she felt like she got a good product from you. And I hope that I'm able to do that also. I'm concerned about jobs. I'm concerned about our ability to be able to get the best people in the marketplace. I'm concerned, as a member of Congress who represents about a 42% Hispanic seat, that the children that we educate, people who we spend time with, understand that we're up in Washington trying to work together. That's important. But I think more importantly that we're trying to work for their future, for a better future for them to have jobs and jobs availability. Education is one thing. A job is another. And we spend a great deal of time posturing ourselves up here one way or another. The bottom line is it's a big job. It does require us to work together and for us to do the things which will enhance a diverse marketplace and the ability to bring together the best resources that this country has to offer. I'm in support of the STEMS Jobs Act because I believe what it tries to do, as Chairman Smith has outlined, is to make sure that we have programs for people that are good in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics. And from my earliest time out of college through my career, I ran around people in the high-tech industry who are highly educated, who have much to bring to the workplace, in a diverse workplace. My biggest change was when I moved to New Jersey and was at Bell Labs. And let me tell you, they didn't have a lot of Texans up there. And I was part of the diversity. And I worked well with people there and enjoyed what they brought. Many times they came from other countries, spoke foreign languages, and I'm the one that talked funny. But I do believe that a diverse workplace does work. I've seen it work. And science, mathematics, technology, and engineering works well together. So I'm delighted that Chairman Smith has brought this as in his role as Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and let it be noted that I hope he's done well enough to where he'll want to continue these same types of efforts as he deals with the Science Committee. So I have great confidence in Lamar and delighted that you've been here today. I yield back my time.
Thank you very much. And, let me join in, David, to tell you how much we're really going to miss you around here. Being able to chair this committee is really one of the privileges that our colleagues bestow on us. And while we may approach things differently from time to time, nonetheless, I've always found you a joy to work with. And hope to see you often. And I want to give my best wishes to my friend Mr. Sessions. He and I have spoken. Look forward to working with him. We've got a lot of work to do to get this country back on its feet, and I think all of us are pledged to be able to do that. I thank the three of you for your work. I have no questions. I think it's quite clear, and we understand it. Thank you for your work.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we've all said to you before that we're going to miss you when you announced that you were going to be retiring, and I suspect we'll have more opportunities to say that to you, but provide and ice cream, that's right, Dreyer's ice cream. Well, I want to thank the chairman also for coming to bring this bill to us and congratulate him on his new role as chairman of the Science and Technology Committee. I did want to ask Ms. Lufgren one quick question. You made a comment that caught my attention. You said, and you were reading from something, you said the bill as I understand it. Have you read the bill, or?
Yes.
Did that mean that you haven't understood the bill? You haven't read the bill?
No, actually, I was, instead of reading my statement, I was extrapolating, so I should have said the bill rather than as I understand it.
Okay. Well, I thought, given as how you had worked a lot in this field,
yes,
that I suspect.
I stand corrected, Ms. Fox.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate your clarifying that. And I also heard you say, invoke the name of someone that has absolutely nothing to do with immigration issues, and I find it kind of interesting that you would say something about Grover Norquist in this bill, that this was a Grover Norquist kind of thing. That's really curious to me that that would be brought up here in an area that, as far as I know, Mr. Norquist has not spoken about or has anything to do with, but it seems to be some sort of mantra that's coming out. But I think that we aren't talking about a zero-sum game. We're talking about giving an opportunity to people who want to come to this country, the greatest country in the world, the only country I know of where people are dying to get into because we are such a great country. And I see it as a plus for both the people who will be given these visas and our country to provide them an opportunity and also to bring talent here and keep talent here that would be useful. So I think it is a good thing that we are attempting to make changes in this area, and so I'm sorry that it is seen that way by you, because I don't believe that's the case.
I'd be happy to clarify if I may. In fact, Rover Norquist, from what I've read of his comments, favors top-to-bottom immigration reform, or in the lingo, comprehensive immigration reform. I meant merely to draw an analogy between some who have pledged never to have an additional visa, just as Mr. Norquist has extracted pledges never to have an additional tax revenue. That was the analogy I was trying to draw.
Oh, I understood the analogy you were making very well. I just find it interesting that that name is being invoked. Republicans don't feel that we have to have comprehensive immigration reform as we understand it, I think, but we want to make movements in the direction where we think there's good support, bipartisan support, and I think it's a good move to be able to do this. I don't think we need to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Let me just see, can I add to the discussion following on Dr. Fox? Reading from an ABC Univision speech, Norquist did make the following statement. I think we need comprehensive reform that deals with the people who've been here for some time. That's his quote. Norquist said, going on to cite a quote whose origin he couldn't quite remember. And then to quote him again, I don't care how tall the fence is as long as the doors are big enough. So Mr. Norquist is a player around here, and he has had something to say about immigration reform. But let me turn my attention to you, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and then to Ms. Lofgren, and doubtless Ms. Jackson-Lee might have something to say about this as well. The bill that we're considering is described as a STEM bill, but it's clearly not a clean STEM bill. And rather than just creating STEM visas that Democrats in the House and Senate, I believe, would absolutely support, this bill, like the bill that we had another one here in September and it failed, also eliminates the diversity visa program. Now, these two programs, at least to me, don't appear to be linked in any way, and I, for one, can see no reason why we would have to offset the creation of new visas with the elimination of existing visas. So perhaps, Mr. Chairman, you can enlighten me and tell me about the inclusion of what I perceive, and I may be wrong, as a poison pill in the STEM bill. Perhaps you see it differently, but why do we have this offset in this measure?
I'll be happy to try to respond to that. Let me say, first of all, that we consider the bill to improve our immigration system in both ways. That is to say that we're allowing talented individuals who have received masters and PhDs to stay in this country and work. We consider the offset to actually be an improvement in our immigration system for two reasons. The diversity visas need to be eliminated because, one, the rampant evidence of fraud in the diversity visa program, and second of all, because it's a threat to national security. Because you really allow individuals on the basis of luck or the draw to come into our country. That is not a partisan statement. We've had administration officials in this administration confirm the degree of fraud and the threat to our national security. We had an Assistant Secretary of State testify to that. So by eliminating visas that are literally awarded on the basis of chance and invite fraud and are a threat to our national security, we think we're improving the system.
All right. Just before you answer, Ms. Lofgren, let me, Mr. Chairman, ask unanimous consent to admit in the record the statement of administration policy. Without objection. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to comment.
Yes, Ms. Lofgren.
Yeah, I will, and then defer to my colleague, Ms. Jackson Lee. In past years, there were defects with this program that have been corrected. There was the capacity to misuse it, and really the testimony we've received is that all of those problems have been resolved. The idea, if you were a terrorist, that you would join the 7,941,400 people who applied for a diversity visa that has only 50,000, that's how you would seek to get in when you could get in on a visitor's visa is preposterous. There's no evidence that that is actually a route being selected by terrorists. I understand that some members object to the random nature of the lottery that is the diversity visa. I think there are ways, and I actually attempted to work with Mr. Smith to deal with alternate ways to address the diversity issue, because I think there are different ways to accomplish the diversity goal. It doesn't have to be the way it is now, but those conversations, unfortunately, never occurred, and now we don't have that alternative. So, you can't come to an agreement if you never have a discussion, and unfortunately, that's where we find ourselves today.
If I might, Mr. Hastings, thank you for asking that question. I think earlier in my remarks, I commented on statistics that showed the range of diversity visas, if I might, starting in 1994, countries like Poland, Ireland, United Kingdom, Canada, Japan. We moved on through 99 and 2004. Now 2009 was the last report that we found. And by the way, Ireland had 15,000 diversity visas applied or approved. In 2009, we had Ethiopia, Nigeria, Egypt, and Bangladesh. But let me just share these numbers with you, that of those numbers, they represent only 11% of those seeking legal permanent residence. Those from Europe made up 28%, and those from the North American region made up 33%. This is to say that this is a minute part of our immigration process, and it was in the wisdom of Congress thought to be even-handed and fair. As relates to the fraud, I think Congressman Lawford made a very good point as to whether that would be the best vehicle for anyone attempting to do us harm. But to go specifically to the issue of so-called fraud, it was ultimately determined by the OIG that the fraud was because of a non-tested computer out of the Council of Systems and Technology Office. And most of the evidence of abuse comes from our friends, and they certainly have their right, from the Heritage Foundation and Numbers USA. As a member of the committee, for many, many years, we have heard from our friends who oppose immigration reform and used diversity visas as a basis to do so. Diversity visas is a component of the attitude that Americans have had about legal immigration. It is a legal immigration process. It happens in this period of our life, deal with countries that come from places like Eastern Europe and Africa, and frankly, I believe we do ourselves a disservice. By the way, Turkey participated in the diversity visa program, and so did Germany. And I beg of my colleague from Texas that it is not the place to secure those 55,000 STEM visas from. You can add to and not undermine the legal immigration system by eliminating the diversity process.
Thank you very much. Let me ask Ms. Lofgren, The way the bill's drafted, it looks like we're creating the same number of green cards each year for STEM graduates as we are eliminating each year from diversity visa recipients. Now, we know we don't need to pit one program against the other, and that the whole idea of so-called offsetting visas has been forced upon us by our colleagues in the majority, who pledged to do nothing on immigration that is not based by, Ms. Jackson-Lee just mentioned, on Numbers USA, an organization who, I believe, their primary purpose is to reduce both legal and illegal immigration to the United States. Still, the bill is drafted to look like it makes one-to-one exchange. So, Ms. Lofgren, I heard you say back in September when we debated the bill that the devil is in the details and that the bill was actually drafted to decrease legal immigration to the U.S. by allowing these new visas to go to waste if they are unused in a given year. Can you explain that to us, or would you be so kind as to do so?
It looks like one-for-one, which I have a concern about because I don't, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I don't think we need to get into the zero-sum game, but it's worse than that, and here's why. If you have 50,000 visas for STEM students, that assumes you've got 50,000 PhD and master's graduates who are foreign students from eligible institutions every year. That's not correct. Now, there'll be a backlog, and reasonable people have actually tried to estimate what that backlog is, and the honest answer is we don't know, because we don't know how many of those individuals will actually decide to stay in the United States. But at some point, the backlog will be worked off, and you have to go to what is the yearly graduation. The National Science Foundation has told us that approximately 36,000 foreign students graduated with master's or PhDs in STEM fields, excluding the biological sciences, which this bill does, in 2010, for example. However, that includes degrees from 671 U.S. colleges and universities, but the STEM visa is going to be available only to graduates of the 207 institutions that are currently classified by the Carnegie Foundation as engaging in high or very high level of research activities. Now, we're trying to get the actual numbers, which is surprisingly not that easy to do, but if the bill is excluding students with advanced degrees from over two-thirds of the universities that provide such degrees, we don't know how many of the 36,000 STEM graduates will be excluded, but certainly a very significant number. Let's just assume it's the two-thirds. We will then have a number of about 10 to 20,000 graduates who are even eligible to apply, and not all of those graduates necessarily want to stay in the United States. So you're talking about, maybe 10, 12,000, maybe 20. Let's be expansive and say it's 20. Well, it's 50,000 visas, and after the fourth year, the 30,000 visas expire. So it actually has the effect of reducing legal immigration to the United States, which I do not support. Thank you.
Let me ask either of you, has this bill gone through the committee process, and has it been scored by CBO? Ms. Lofgren shakes her head no. Ms. Chairman?
Has it gone through the committee and has it been scored?
You want me to put the question again, Mr. Chairman? I was asking, has this
answer is
particular
yes,
measure gone through the committee process, and has it been scored by CBO?
It has been scored, that is correct. And we've had any number of hearings on the subject as well.
It has been scored?
It has been.
Do you have numbers to reflect
Yes,
what
I
that
think it
score
is $4 billion, and we have an offset.
I thank you very much for that. Let me also say to you what my overall sentiment is as I prepare, as I did the several times, now three times that this measure is coming up. This is just pure, plain old politics. And I don't think my friends in the majority are drawing the lessons that I think all of us should have learned from the election that all of us are just coming out of. I hope you continue down the path that you are going on, because I think that some of the people that you are trying to attract are less likely to be attracted to measures of this kind. So keep on keeping on, as we used to say when I was a little boy, and keep on not understanding the need for comprehensive immigration reform in this country. And one day you will be in the wilderness, and you will be there for a hell of a long time. Thank you.
Bishop. Wallace.
Ask the question about the score. We just learned that the majority has indicated that the score hadn't been released.
Is there? I would ask the chair, Chairman Smith. Is there a score for the bill?
Score, I think, just yesterday afternoon or perhaps this morning at $4 billion. $4 billion is my understanding.
$4 billion of which way? It costs or raises $4 billion? Okay.
I stand corrected. It is 1.5
Yeah.
1.5 billion, not 4 billion.
It raises that much or costs that much?
I'm sorry?
It raises that much or it costs that much?
It costs that much.
Okay, it costs. Well, it could go either way. Okay, so it costs 1.5 billion.
The reason for that was the additional change we made to the bill to allow the spouses and minor children of legal permanent residents in this country to have the spouses and the minor children join them in this country. And the cost because of additional government benefits and the fact that oftentimes the spouses might have children who would then be citizens, and the cost of that and so forth added up to that score.
Well, again, thank you for at least considering a bill after towards the end of the term that's immigration related. We have a lot of work to do on immigration. I think that much is clear. The people of the country agree with that overwhelmingly. Whether people are on the left or the right, I don't think anybody is happy with the dysfunction of the current system, where over 10 million people are here illegally. There is poor enforcement at the employer level. There is people sneaking across the border. There are people overstaying their visas and working. There are families being torn apart. There's really little to be proud of with regard to how things are today. So I hope that we have a strong commitment, and there's been several members who have mentioned this, to move forward with whether you call it comprehensive immigration reform or not, but clearly it's more than what this bill does. And I certainly, even avid proponents of this bill aren't saying that this somehow fixes everything to do with immigration. Clearly it doesn't affect the people that are here illegally, nor does it necessarily slow their flow. It simply affects who the one subset of the legal people are. Are they STEM graduates, or are they people from Poland and Tanzania? And there's merits on both sides of that. Many of us would argue the country needs both of those. We need immigrants from Poland, and we also need STEM graduates. So the question before us will be which one is more important on the margins. But more importantly, hopefully this will cause Congress to focus on the important work of fixing our broken immigration system, which I'm sure both proponents and opponents of this bill can agree that this bill alone doesn't do. Whether it's a small step in the right direction or a small step in the wrong direction, we have a lot of work before us. And I hope that regardless of the outcome of this bill, hopefully it will help bring the topic of immigration back to the forefront, so that people on both sides can work towards a solution. And I do want to ask the chair whether he plans to continue his work in the next session on solving all of the issues around immigration and maintaining his interest. I know he'll no longer be the chair of that committee, but do his plans, your plans, Mr. Chairman, also include working in a systemic way to address all of the issues around immigration?
I appreciate the question. I expect to be involved in the process and look forward to coming up with mutually agreeable solutions.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thanks to the three for being here. I'll conclude the hearing, and we appreciate we will distribute the rule if we can. Thank you. The chair will be in receipt of a motion from the gentleman from Utah. You ready? Go right ahead.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 6429, the STEM Jobs Act of 2012, a closed rule. The rule provides 90 minutes of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary. The rule waives all points of orders against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of the Rules Committee print 112-34 as modified by the amendment printed in the Rules Committee report shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of orders against provisions in the bill as amended. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instruction. And finally, the rule provides that it shall be in order at any time on the legislative day of December 6, 2012 for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. Let me just say at the outset, as Mr. Bishop has said, this includes 90 minutes of debate, deals with the cut-go issue with an amendment that is going to be included from Mr. Smith, and there was bipartisan support for this measure when it was under suspension of the rules, and I know that there will be continued bipartisan support even with the concerns that have been raised by our friends. And in light of the fact that we're dealing with the fiscal challenges as we head towards the end of the year, this rule does include a provision that will allow for the consideration of bills under the suspension authority next Thursday. So are there any amendments to the rule? Ms. Slaughter? You've heard the oh, okay, sure. Let's hear what I want to know what an open rule is. I want to hear about this.
But in reality, it actually hurts families trying to come illegally and reduces the total amount of leases that can be offered. The bill does not fix the country's immigration problems. It's another example of the majority moving us backwards. We need to make this an open rule so we can move forward and work together to fix the immigration system in this country.
Thank you very much for that. The vote occurs on the Slaughter amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair.
Roll call, please.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions, no. Ms. Fox. No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop. No. Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall. Mr. Nugent. Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott. No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster. No. Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Slaughter.
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern. Mr. Hastings.
Aye.
Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis.
Aye.
Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Mr. Clerk, the total?
3 yeas, 7 nays.
And the amendment is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? Ms. Slaughter.
Well, more or less a statement or a question. At the beginning of the meeting, we saw the amendment that none of us has had an opportunity to review, and we'll be using the deem and pass procedure, which is we've discussed many times in here. But you have also opposed that in the past, and we wonder why you would consider adopting this amendment when you close down the process and haven't allowed any other amendments a chance to be considered on the floor since the rule is closed.
So are you asking that we strike that, or is this a request that you're making? Or?
Well, we'd like an answer to why all other amendments are disallowed.
Well, you can offer the other amendments. We haven't considered all the other amendments yet here in the committee. If you have other amendments that
we
you'd
understand
like to
this is a closed rule.
Well, that's what it's been submitted as, but we haven't had consideration of it. Obviously, there was a cut-go concern that was raised.
Right.
And the way to deal with that was for the inclusion of an amendment that the chairman of the committee has offered here, and that's the reason. But, I mean, again, we have not made a determination as to exact. Well, yes, every member will have a chance to vote on that because we'll be reporting out the rule, and there will be a vote in this committee as to whether or not that is to be included, and then every member of the House will have an opportunity to vote on it when we vote on the consideration of the rule on the House floor, which will allow for that amendment that deals with the cut-go question that was there to be resolved.
Well, it would really be refreshing of something of this magnitude if we could have an open rule. Just here, lame duck to try to have one opportunity for people to really express themselves on it. But thank you for your explanation. Thank you.
Any other amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hastings.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order en bloc and give the necessary waivers for the amendments by Ms. Jackson Lee, numbers 1 and 2.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. The vote occurs on the Hastings Amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no.
Aye.
And the chair, the noes have it, the noes have it.
I ask for a roll call.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions? No. Mr. Sessions, no. Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop? No. Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Nugent? No. Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster? No. Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern? Mr. Hastings?
Aye.
Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis?
Aye.
Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Mr. Clerk, the total.
3 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment's not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, may I please ask, is this rule going to be on the floor tomorrow, or do you know?
Yes, the rule's going to be on the floor tomorrow. That's the
All
plan.
right, and then the following day, we would likely finish up and vote on it?
Yeah, I think so. We've got, again,
Yeah.
90 minutes.
I only ask for just my personal scheduling reason and not seeking any empathy or sympathy, but my chief of staff's wife died.
Oh, I'm
and
so
I'm
sorry.
going
I'm
to
terribly
have to
sorry.
attend the funeral, and I'm just trying to organize myself in that regard.
So sorry to hear that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule, and I move the committee make an order en bloc and give the necessary waivers for the amendments by Representative Lofgren, numbers 4 and 5.
Vote occurs on the Hastings Amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those
Aye.
opposed, no.
Aye.
The chair, the noes have it, the noes have it.
I ask for a roll call,
Call the roll.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sessions? No. Mr. Sessions? No. Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox? No. Mr. Bishop? No. Mr. Bishop? No. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent? No. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Webster? No. Mr. Webster? No. Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter? Aye. Mr. McGovern? Mr. Hastings?
Aye.
Mr. Hastings? Aye. Mr. Polis?
Aye.
Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman? No.
Mr. Clerk, the total.
3 yeas, 7 nays.
Amendment's not agreed to. Mr. Polis.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order and give the necessary waivers for my amendment number 3, which would allow foreign investment by permanently reauthorizing the EB5 Regional Center Program.
You've heard the motion of the
If I
gentleman.
may
Those
speak
in
to
favor-
it?
Oh, I thought you did.
Oh, no, I just made the motion. I just wanted to be recognized to speak to it.
Absolutely. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. EB5 program allows, is an investor visa program that encourages capital to be deployed on projects across America, whether it's redevelopments of malls and hotels or investments in active businesses. They have to create jobs. However, the program has suffered because of its continual temporary reauthorizations. And when you're plotting a business and raising capital, it's hard to go to investors and say, we don't know if this will be here in 3 months or 5 months, and we truly don't. It's been continued on a very short-term basis. My amendment would simply allow for the permanent reauthorization of EB5, which would allow for attracting more capital and creating jobs. It's a program that has had strong bipartisan support over time, and I believe it would improve the overall bill, and I encourage my colleagues to allow for it to be considered, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Vote occurs on the amendment of our friend from Colorado. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The chair, the noes have it.
Roll call vote, Mr. Chair.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions? No. Mr. Sessions? No. Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox? No. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop? No. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent? No. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster? No. Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter? Aye. Mr. McGovern? Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings? Aye. Mr. Polis? Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman? No.
Mr. Clerk, the total.
3 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment's not agreed to. Are there further amendments? If not, the vote occurs on the motion of the gentleman from Utah. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed
Roll
to.
call, please, Mr. Chair.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions?
Aye.
Mr. Sessions? Aye. Ms. Fox? Ms. Fox? Aye. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop? Aye. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent? Aye. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott? Aye. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster? Aye. Ms. Slaughter? Ms. Slaughter? Aye. Ms. Slaughter? Ms. Slaughter, no. Mr. McGovern? Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis? Mr. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk, the total.
7 yeas, 3 nays.
And the motion is agreed to, and this will be managed by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Nugent.
Mr. Polis for the
And
minority.
Mr. Polis. Thank you all very much. That should conclude our meetings for the week, but we got plenty of work ahead of us. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you all very much.